water changes. How much, how often, and how frequently should we be doing water changes in our aquariums? This is some of the questions that I'm going to try to answer in this video. So I hope you guys watch till the end, because I'm going to do my best to make it as short as possible and give you all the information that I think is relevant in this regard. If you are new here, subscribe, hit that notification icon so you do not miss out on all these cool content that are coming to you through this channel. Advanced fish keeping is what I like to help with, because I believe there's a big lack of information in this field when it comes to past the beginner stage of the hobby. So hopefully I can reach more of you guys. So if you are a regular subscriber, thank you so much. You can help me out by sharing my channel with all your networks, because it does help to grow the channel. So help a brother out by sharing my channel with your networks, so we can grow this channel as fast as possible. And thank you so much for your continued love and support. Let's get into this video and find out exactly how much, how often, how frequently we should be doing water changes in our home aquariums.
Produced by Malik.
What is going on, world? Welcome back to AquaMalik. Today's video is about water changes. You guys often ask me, pretty regularly actually, when should I be doing a water change, how much should I be taking out, and how often should I be doing water changes in my aquarium. Now, this is not a question that I can answer for you. This is a question you need to figure out for yourself, but I will be giving you some tips and help so that you can determine when or how often or how much water should you be removing, and what's going on with that entire thing. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is this tank here does not need a water change for at least another week or two, because the tank is actually, the nitrates in this tank are quite low. But we cannot say that by looking at the tank. The tank looks disgusting with all the mom and debris that the fish have created. I have wood-eating fish in this tank, so in turn, this tank is usually the worst looking in my fish room right now, because of the amount of decomposing wood that these fish produce after eating. So visually, if I look in this tank and the tank below it, I would automatically assume this tank would need a water change before the tank below it, because this tank looks dirtier. But the reality is the nitrates in this tank are below 10 parts per million, probably about 10 ppm now. You see the plants are kind of suffering because of that as well. But you know, I personally look at it and it bothers me quite a bit. So I always think, okay, I should be doing a water change. But the reality is I don't need to do a water change in this particular tank. But the tank below it is a completely different scenario, where the tank looks completely fine. Everything is, the fish are fine, pristine looking. There's different kinds of fish in there. Two types of loricariids, corridoras, as well as a really large ultim angel. And all of them are always eating. Everybody's healthy. My corridoras are constantly spawning. The plecos are showing a lot of spawning. We have rhino loricaria in there that are also spawning pretty regularly. Right now they haven't in the last few weeks, but they are a pretty frequent spawner for me. The pH is really low in here, so I can't even do a large volume water change, but you can see how clean the water looks. Crystal clear, right? Everything looks really nice. There's heavy plants. The fish look completely normal. Everybody's active. They're hiding right now, but you see all these plants are in here. They're doing great. The tank looks great compared to this, which looks like a mess. See? So the difference visually is stark, but this tank, the fish could die at any minute because the pH could get to an unsustainable level. This guy might be okay because he can handle a lot of lower pH, but the plecos and the corridoras might not be, you know? The problem with that tank is there's a really high amount of nitrates in the tank right now, as well as probably a large concentration of phosphates, and the pH is close to 5. Now visually, if I were to look in the tank, I would not know any of these things. The TDS is close to 350 parts per million. My tap TDS is about 180, so you can see there's a lot of other stuff aside from what I put into the tank out of my tap, okay? And the pH is quite low. My tap pH is 7.4, and this tank is now sitting at close to 5. A little below 5.5 the last time I checked. So this is in dire need of a water change and correcting the pH drop, because at some point, if I don't do that, the pH could crash to a level where these particular fish cannot live in it anymore, and these fish will die. So there will be, so the average fish keeper would look at that and say the fish were fine yesterday, they were eating and everything was great. And that's the problem with it, because if you don't realize that issue, which is your pH going down or something else like like a nitrate spike or ammonia spike or nitrite spike or something else that could potentially kill your fish. Now, nitrates, not nitrites, are not as harmful as ammonia or nitrites. If you have ammonia and nitrite spikes, that means your cycle is not established or you've crashed your cycle, and that's something that you cannot fix with this type of situation. Like water changes alone might not fix that problem. You might have to do a lot of other things like re-establishing your cycle. You might lose some fish in turn if your ammonia cycle crashed. So be careful not to crash your cycle, and we'll be looking at that in other videos as well, and I've actually talked about this in previous videos, so I'll try to put some links up here if I can find some of the videos where I actually discuss this particular issue. But for the purpose of this video, your nitrates is your measure where you should be looking at before you do a water change. The two things I would say, nitrates and pH. If your pH is dropping, remedy it by doing water changes, small water changes, and then bring up the pH closer to where your tap pH is and try to maintain it close to that, or wherever you think is ideal, or where you prefer to maintain your pH at a stable level. Because if you do have pH crashes, you can really fast kill your fish, and the fish will look fine until the day, and then the next day they will not be. So that's the reality of it. The next thing is nitrates. Now, these type of tests, for example, will tell you exactly how much nitrates you might have in your water. You will get a good estimate. The API test kit, it's a little bit bulkier and a little bit cumbersome, but does give you good results as well. Not a paid advertisement. These things will show you exactly what percentage of nitrates are there in your water. And I personally recommend, as your nitrates go above 40 parts per million, you should probably do a 50 to 60% water change to bring that nitrates down and bring it close to 20 parts per million. I personally like to maintain tanks that are below 20 parts per million in nitrates because my fish spawning and stuff. So in turn, I use things like aquarium resin or nitrate removing resin now, as well as smaller water changes regularly to keep my nitrates down. I feed also less food than most other people. I only feed what my fish can eat, and there's no food wastage and things like that. There's less fish in the tank. So in turn, by doing these things, I do reduce the amount of buildup of nitrates and other toxins. So in turn, I like to maintain the lower nitrate concentration. So for me personally, as my nitrates go above 20 parts per million, I do a water change. And usually I don't actually have to use any of these devices to actually measure that. My tap water TDS is about 180 parts per million. So as I do a water change, I try to bring the tank close to 180 ppm as possible. And if my ppm in the tanks go above 200 parts, then I know that there's about 20 parts per million of something in there, most likely nitrates and a little bit of phosphates and other garbage that might accumulate. So I like to remove that by doing, a larger volume water change or a few smaller volume water changes ideally. Now, how often I do this purely is dependent on what is going on in the tank and what this measurement is showing me. For example, if this shows me a measurement over 200 parts per million, like my Zeb tank is at about 210, and they just spawned and I'm about to do a water change, actually probably in the next 48 hours, they will probably get a 25 to 30% water change, and another 24 to 48 hours later, they might get another 20-25% water change, just so that I can bring the nitrates down a little bit, as well as my total TDS below 200 ppm. I probably would like to have it close to 190, which is where I probably will end up bringing it to after my 2 water changes. So that's what I like to do, and that might, after I set that up, that tank might be good for at least 5 to 6 weeks because it's only 14 little fish in there and some guppies, and it's a big enough tank where it's not accumulating a lot of nitrates or anything like that, and I also have nitrate removing resin in there, so it extends the amount of time that I need to do a water change. But by doing that, my pH is also has more chance to fluctuate and drop, so I have to keep an eye on these things as I do allow the water, not doing as much water changes in that particular tank. Or for example, this particular tank, right now I do have a little bit extra population, like this guy produces a little bit more waste than what I would like, so I have to do a water change in here about every 3 to 4 weeks currently. And even with that schedule, the nitrates don't seem to accumulate, and the only reason I do it every 3 to 4 weeks now is it's also because there's a lot of poop accumulating. But as a general rule, when I do work full-time, I would personally like to change all my tanks every other week, just to have some type of a scheduled structure. And in that instance, I would just say every other week, every tank gets a water change. So one weekend I'll do a section, next weekend I'll do the other section. So that's when I have a full-time job, and I don't actually keep track of exactly what's going on in every single one of my tanks. So that's also a really good strategy to have, where you do a 25 to 30% water change every weekend, or a 50% water change every other weekend, or maybe a 75% water change once a month. Which are all acceptable as long as you can maintain a low nitrate environment throughout that entire time. As a general rule of thumb, over 40 parts per million of nitrates is when you should ideally be doing a water change in your aquarium. And if your nitrates are over 40 parts per million, if you do a 50% water change, your nitrates are now below 20 parts per million, as long as your incoming tap water does not have any nitrates. So that's the bottom line of the video. I hope this helps some of you guys answer some of the questions. I know this is not going to be end-all be-all video, so I will do a follow-up trying to answer some more questions that might arise. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to comment below and ask away, and I would be willing and really glad to help you guys and answer them in a timely manner. And if you have any other suggestions, also please comment and let me know. And hope everybody's having a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next video. And if you are new here, subscribe, hit that notification so you do not miss out on all these cool videos. I'll see you on the next video. I love you all. God bless you.
Produced by Malik.